VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. My name is Jim Schneider. We appreciate you joining us for the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, if a kindergarten teacher were killed by a gunman, it would be the top story on news outlets across the country. Night after night, network news would be doing follow-up stories. Print media across the nation would cover this story, and certain congressional offices would be putting forth press releases. We'd probably even be hearing from the president himself talking about another senseless killing and tell us why it is that we need gun control laws in place. That's what would happen if a gunman robbed a kindergarten teacher of their life. But what about instead of a gunman, this same young kindergarten teacher died from complications due to an abortion? The broadcast news media is silent. Newspapers across the country are not carrying the story in droves. Press releases are not pouring forth from congressional offices, and the president has not said a word. Here to discuss this matter with us today is Cheryl Sullenger, the Senior Policy Advisor for Operation Rescue. Cheryl, thanks so much for joining us today.
All right, thanks for having me.
Cheryl, tell us the story of Jennifer Morbelli, a young 29-year-old kindergarten teacher from New York.
Well, according to our information, about 2 weeks before she went to Germantown, Maryland for a 33-week abortion, she was told by one of her doctors that her baby had some abnormalities, including a seizure disorder. We don't know what else was involved in that, but there was some sort of problem with her baby, health problem with her baby. And so she was encouraged to go down to see Leroy Carhart and get an abortion of this pregnancy. This was a wanted pregnancy. I mean, she had a gift registry up online where she had already selected gifts for her baby and everything. And they had named their baby Madison Lee, and the baby was actually an expected and wanted baby until they found out that there were health issues involved. And so once she went to Germantown, she began a 4-day process that is involved in getting an abortion in the 33rd week of pregnancy. And on the last day of that process, she apparently delivered her baby, was suffering some complications. She was sent back to her hotel. Leroy Carhart got on an airplane and left Maryland. In the night, her condition worsened. Efforts to reach Leroy Carhart were unsuccessful. Her family finally rushed her to a nearby emergency room at Shady Grove Adventist Hospital, where she was admitted about 5 a.m. She apparently was suffering internal bleeding to the extent that she was not able to sustain life. Apparently she coded, in other words, went into cardiac and respiratory arrest, and was revived 5 different times. The 6th time she passed.
My. Do we know why she went to Maryland for this?
And she's from New York. Excuse me. And in New York, they apparently do not allow elective late-term abortions, which is what this actually was. This was not a situation where the mother's life was in danger, and in that case, she could have been checked into a hospital up in New York. Instead, she had what is considered an elective abortion, and she had to go to Maryland in order to get that. There's only about 4 abortion clinics in the country that openly do these late 3rd trimester abortions, and the Maryland clinic happened to be the closest for her.
Now, we understand, as you mentioned, Cheryl, that she was wanting to keep the baby. They had this gift registry for the baby. Was this a sudden decision then? Because we know that there are many young people that experience seizures, and there's proper medication to control those seizures. Do we know anything more about that aspect of it?
Well, like I said, our information is that she was notified about 2 weeks prior to the abortion. So from the time that she found out that there was an issue, a health issue with her baby, until the time she had an abortion, about 2 weeks elapsed. And for me, that's a sudden decision. You know, when you're that close to delivery and you make a decision within a 2-week time period, yeah, that's pretty sudden.
Operation Rescue is actually pushing for criminal charges in this case. Tell us why.
Well, I think the issue in this case is a patient abandonment and what's called, according to Maryland law, depraved heart murder. In other words, you know, the person who kills the other person has no regard for the person's life and is engaged in reckless or dangerous behavior that you would expect would result in a death. And in this case, Hart abandoned his patient at a time when she really needed him. And actually, according to the normal protocol, he should have stuck around one more day after she delivered her dead baby. He should have stuck around another day and given her a follow-up examination a day after the birth. He did not do that. He got on an airplane and left.
Well, was this a vacation or moving on to the next patient? Or
no, he's actually from Nebraska. He has an abortion clinic in Nebraska. He also works for an abortion clinic in Indianapolis. He has a pretty tight travel schedule, from my understanding. And so what he'll do is he'll go to Maryland, he'll do the late-term abortions. He'll be there about 4 days. Then he'll fly out, go either to Indianapolis or to Nebraska, where he has abortion patients waiting for him.
Now, when did this incident happen with Jennifer Morbelli?
This happened, she passed away on Thursday, the 7th at approximately 10 a.m.
February 7th?
Yes.
Now, has the license been suspended of Mr. Carhart at this point?
No. As far as I know, there has yet to be a complaint filed with the medical board, and the way most medical boards work is that even if it's front-page headline news, they really cannot begin an investigation until a formal complaint has been filed. What we're hoping is that the hospital will step up and file the complaint against Carhart because it would really be their first responsibility to do that. If for some reason the hospital does not want to file a complaint, then we are considering our options in that case, and it's possible that we could file the complaint. We've done this in other cases and have had relatively good success at being able to get discipline in these cases, but it would actually, in our opinion, be a stronger case if the hospital went ahead and filed the complaint, and that's what we're waiting for right now.
How has Mr. Carhart responded to these allegations?
He's been very quiet. He has, as far as I know, I'm not sure that he's made any comments on this case, and I'll tell you, if I was his lawyer, I would tell him not to talk, because anything he says would only be incriminating. I mean, there's really not much excuse for his behavior. We've seen cases like this before. We had a case out in California several years ago where an abortionist injured a woman in an abortion. He got in his car and drove. That was in Santa Ana. He got in his car and drove to San Diego. And they called him and said, "You have to come back. She's having trouble." And it's like, no, I got to get to my next abortion patient, And so he didn't go back. The patient died. And the medical board actually demanded that he surrender his license, which he did.
But I thought there was such care and compassion for women.
Well, yeah, that's only their PR side that is promoting that because the reality is, and we've dealt with many, many abortionists all over the country. We've dealt extensively with them. We've been involved in disciplinary proceedings with them, and everything. And what we have found is that we have not found one single abortion clinic in this country that obeys the law. There's something wrong with all of them, either with the facility or with their practices, with the abortionists. Many of them are very, very troubled individuals. And so, yeah, most of the consideration in an abortion clinic is for collecting the fee from the patient.
We're speaking with Cheryl Sullenger here today from Operation Rescue. Cheryl, is it true that the Maryland Attorney General's office has already had an investigation kind of going on at this time regarding Mr. Carhart and also the Germantown Reproductive Health Services Center there?
Yeah, that's correct. In July of last year, we filed a complaint regarding the illegal disposal of medical waste and patient private information, medical information, is being illegally dumped at his clinic. And it's interesting that the day after, Jennifer's death was actually reported on Friday the 8th. The following Monday, the Attorney General's office called and notified us that they were continuing to investigate this.
The illegal dumping
incident. Right. The day, yeah. So it took them 6 months to decide to go ahead and investigate, and I believe what prompted it was a death. It was too coincidental. It'd be the next business day.
Now, explain further for us, what is illegal dumping?
Well, what they would do is they would take, to put it as delicately as possible, infectious medical waste from the abortions, and they would dump it into a public dumpster, and that is a health issue. Does this
include baby parts?
Yeah, in some cases, yes.
My.
And so human tissue, some assorted baby parts, large amounts of blood, and all that is considered infectious waste. It has to be disposed of through a service that will take it and have it incinerated. And that's not what he was doing. He was just putting it in the regular dumpster with everything else. Also included in that illegal dumping was detailed information about patients, their names, the dates of their abortions, how far along they were, sometimes their addresses, photocopies of their driver's licenses. All of that stuff is private patient information that needs to be disposed of properly through shredding or some other kind of medical records destroying service, and not put in a public dumpster where anybody can find it.
Yeah, so much for HIPAA.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheryl Sullenger with us here today on Crosstalk, and we're talking about a very tragic case that has come regarding a 29-year-old kindergarten teacher from New York and going to Maryland for a third trimester abortion. And as our guest has described for us today, what appears to be just total abandonment as she's going through a severe medical emergency in her own life, and ultimately has led to her death. But folks, this is not an isolated incident, and we're going to talk more about that after this break, as well as a link between the late-term abortionist and the Secretary of the Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius. We'll be right back. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, creation author and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what is meant by the evolutionary tree of life?
Chris, the evolutionary tree of life is a graphical display of the concept of evolution. In evolution, non-living chemicals sprung to life somehow, which eventually descended into a vast array of plants and animals. All of life goes back to a common ancestor. Often this tree of life is presented as if it were fact, but nothing could be further from the truth. What we find is little clusters of organisms like cats and dogs and variety of each, but nothing in between. There are no branches, no trunk, just little twigs. This is exactly what there should be if creation is true. God created things after their kind and allowed them to vary, but one didn't turn into another. Chris, the evidence exactly supports what the Bible's been saying all along, back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, visit our website at icr.org.
Folks, a very tragic death that occurred last week. The woman who went in for an abortion found her own life being taken. And a very tragic incident. And I'm guessing that you didn't see this at the forefront of your nightly news. You didn't see this on the forefront of your newspapers. And yet we have this kindergarten teacher from New York whose life is taken as she went in for this abortion, and what appears to have been abandoned at a time of great medical need in her own life. You've pointed out today in an article, Cheryl, and folks were speaking with Cheryl Sullenger, Senior Policy Advisor for Operation Rescue. You've pointed out that there's a link between this late-term abortionist, Carhart, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius. Tell us about that link.
Well, Leroy Carhart used to work for a late-term abortion clinic in Wichita, Kansas, and during that time, Kathleen Sebelius was then the governor of Kansas. Sebelius had a reputation of being a very radical supporter of abortion. She opposed all kinds of regulation. She opposed any regulation, as a matter of fact, on abortion clinics, including those that did the dangerous third trimester abortions. And during that time period, there was an incident where a young woman died it was actually 2005, and we had filed a complaint in that case, and Kathleen Sebelius actually interfered with that. She contacted the Board of Healing Arts, and she asked them to report to her on that. The Board of Healing Arts, under political pressure, issued really a premature clearing of the clinic in the death of this young girl, Kristen Gilbert. The abortionist on record was Leroy Carhart at that time. And this board issued this preliminary ruling clearing the clinic 5 months before the autopsy report was even finished. So we had a politically motivated decision by the board not to do anything to those abortion clinics. And after that, Sebelius held a secret party at the governor's mansion to honor this abortion clinic staff, including Leroy Carhart and his wife and other abortionists that worked for this late-term abortion clinic that is now closed in Wichita, by the way. And we were able to obtain photographs of that party that clearly show Leroy Carhart and Kathleen Sebelius at the same party. We know that Sebelius worked overtime to protect the abortionists at that abortion clinic from any kind of accountability under the law. We know she derailed an investigation into the death of this woman in Kansas, and we are concerned that she will try to interfere again in the investigations into the death of Jennifer Morbelli, who died from a late-term abortion by Carhart. There's a relationship between Carhart and Sebelius, and she's very protective. So we're really concerned about that.
Is there anything people across this country can do to hasten an investigation of the allegations here?
Well, there's several investigations going on, and I think probably the best thing that people can do, first of all, is pray. But secondly, I would say we're looking at people to contact the Montgomery County Police and ask that he be held criminally accountable for patient abandonment that reached a criminal level in the case of this death in Maryland.
Are you optimistic that the police will be responsive?
Well, I think what has to happen first is the autopsy report has to be finished. Mm-hmm. And we're looking for a release of that within 6 to 8 weeks. So it may take a little bit of time, but it's really doubtful that any of these boards will act before the official autopsy report is out. And that's what made the case in Kansas so unusual. That case took 8 months for them to put an autopsy report out on that poor girl. And after only 3 months, the board had already said nothing bad happened.
So there really is no...
Except for her being dead, I guess.
There's no real timetable for this then, is there?
No, like I said, normally autopsies take 6 to 8 weeks, and then after that, the investigators will have to analyze that and decide what they're going to do. But once it goes to the medical board, it could take 2 to 3 years. It's extremely frustrating to us that these boards take so long to make decisions. But in Card's case, we have actually 4 active investigations right now, and any one of them could stop him from continuing to do these horrible practices in Maryland.
Yeah, keep in mind, folks, if this were another situation, if there would have been a gun involved, there'd be yellow tape all around there. Law enforcement would be protecting the scene, and on it goes. But somehow, with when abortion's involved, we just try and sweep this under the rug. Cheryl, is Jennifer Morbelli alone in suffering such a fate?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact,
I mean, because we keep hearing abortion is safe and legal.
Yeah, that's what they keep saying, but the reality is that women do die from abortions. They many times they may not actually die, but they are seriously injured. Some can't have babies again. Some have to have emergency hysterectomies. I mean, we have documentation of case after case after case of abortionists hurting women, injuring women, and even killing women that basically never make it into the evening newspaper. Mm-hmm. Never make it. And so people don't really realize. They hear over and over and over again the mantra that abortion is safe and legal when actually the documented evidence says something completely different.
Now, there's another tragic death that occurred in Chicago last July, a 24-year-old woman, Tanya Reeves. Tell us about this story.
Well, Tanya Reeves went to this abortion clinic for an abortion, and something went terribly wrong. She began to hemorrhage internally, and the abortion clinic, this Planned Parenthood office, allowed her to languish in their recovery room for 5.5 hours before they got emergency help for her. Mm. We know that they did not call 911, which was the fastest way to get her help. Instead, she was somehow transported to the hospital where emergency workers were not given any history of her medical condition whatsoever, had to start from scratch trying to figure out what was wrong with her, and by the time they realized she had a uterine puncture and internal bleeding, it was too late to save her life.
That was a Planned Parenthood facility?
Yes, it was.
Wow. We understand that next month, abortion practitioner Kermit Gosnell, based in Philadelphia, is facing murder charges in the deaths of 7 babies and a woman patient in a botched abortion. Can you just refresh our minds as to what transpired just a couple of years back? Because this trial is going to go forward here.
Well, that was one of the most horrific cases, and I think also it's kind of an object lesson to us that we don't know everything that's going on in every abortion clinic in America. Kermit Gosnell flew under the radar for years, conducting the most horrific late-term abortion practice. In fact, you can't even call them late-term abortions, what he was doing. He would actually bring women in, untrained, unlicensed workers, would sedate these women, put them into labor. They would be in labor all day. He would actually deliver these late-term babies, still alive. Then he would take scissors to the back of their neck and snip their spinal cords. And it's honestly like a horror movie when you read the grand jury report that detailed this case and listed the indictments. But there were also 4 other unlicensed workers who were also conducting these late-term, basically what amount to infanticide cases. And so he was charged with 7 counts of murder, but the reality is that he could have been charged with literally hundreds. Hmm.
And I understand that his place where he did these has been dubbed, quote, a house of horrors. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. It was a filthy mess. It was They had cats, I guess, that would just relieve themselves wherever inside the clinic. It was filthy. It had a blocked emergency exit, which actually contributed to the death of one of his patients because the emergency workers couldn't get her out of the clinic, literally could not get her out of the clinic, and that contributed to her death. He's also being charged on one count of murder in the death of that particular woman, along with all the infants that he killed after they were born. And so it was probably one of the most disturbing things that we have ever seen, and I'm hoping to be able to travel to his trial because I'll be really interested to hear some of the testimony in that case when it goes forward next month. But Kermit Gosnell is not alone. Just last month, an abortion clinic was closed by the state of Michigan that had very similar conditions. In fact, that abortion clinic had left for the holidays over Christmas, and when the police arrived, there had been a broken window. They arrived. They saw the condition of the clinic. They called the fire marshal. The fire marshal closed the clinic. The contents of the last abortion that was done several days before were still sitting in a bottle in the abortion machine, and the hoses that would connect to the implements that would actually enter the woman during the abortions were just laying on this filthy floor. I mean, it was the most disgusting thing that he had ever seen. That was the kind of conditions that were in Gosnell's clinic. That was the kind of conditions that were found in this particular Michigan clinic. And it is going on across the country at abortion clinics. People don't realize.
Aren't inspections supposed to be taking place?
Abortion clinics are very rarely inspected. Right now there's kind of a push in several states to get abortion clinics inspected. In fact, in the wake of the Kermit Gosnell case, all of the abortion clinics in Pennsylvania were required to submit to inspections, and I believe there were at least 2 that just closed immediately because of the conditions. And
Carhartt's clinics, have they been inspected?
Carhartt's clinics, as far as I know, have not been inspected. Maryland just passed a clinic licensing law. They licensed the clinic, but it's our understanding that they have yet to inspect any of them.
Folks, I don't know about you, but this should be an outrageous reaction from people across this nation. I mean, we continue to hear, even from the lips of our president, about how we need to protect a woman's right to choose. We keep hearing about abortion being safe, and we need to continue to keep these safeguards in place. And folks, what we're hearing is anything but that. Today, if you'd like to get on board and comment, ask your questions pertaining to these issues, our telephone number here is 800-733-9829. 1-800-733-9829. If this were a shooting, folks, it'd be on the front page of your newspaper, but because it's abortion, guess what? We want to sweep it under the rug. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Nearly 90% of Christian children attend a public school. Filmmaker Colin Gunn, a homeschool father of 7, went on the field trip of a lifetime. Driving an old school bus, Colin and his family traveled across the nation, exploring the origins and social impact of public school education to discover if children are morally and physically safe, if public schools are religiously neutral, and should Christians try to be salt and light in secular schools. 102 minutes in length, it's an impactful message. In the companion book, Indoctrination, some 18 writers come together to look at how the educational system is actively at work to alter your child's moral values, worldview, and religious beliefs. It explores the biblical principles regarding education and who is ultimately responsible for our children's future. The Indoctrination DVD is available for a donation of $22. The book is available for a donation of $18, or you can obtain both for a donation of $35. To obtain yours, call 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
listening to Crosstalk here on the VCY American Network. Our guest today, Cheryl Sullenger from the group Operation Rescue, Senior Policy Advisor there. And Cheryl, you've got a website where our listeners can get information about these and many other stories as well.
That's right. If they go to operationrescue.org, they can read about the latest tragedy in Maryland with abortion-related deaths there, and they can also read about some of the other things that we're doing around the country, actually, to hold abortionists accountable to the law. OperationRescue.org. And folks, today, if you have a comment you'd like to make regarding this, if you have a question you'd like to ask, here's our telephone number. It's 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Let's go to Rock Springs. And Mark, go ahead. You're on the air.
How you doing today? I guess I'm just curious, these horrific acts, why aren't they being charged more for, like, being a serial killer? I mean, instead of just getting their hand slapped and saying you lose your license or...
Well, unfortunately, abortion is legal in the United States up through the 9th month of pregnancy. Some states have limits, and some states just allow it to go through the whole 9 months. So because it's legal, when we have a situation like this, they're really hesitant to really go after these people criminally.
And Cheryl, when you say legal, you're meaning in the eyes of the court and how lawmakers view this as opposed to is it really legal to take the life of another?
Yes, that's right. I'm not talking about morally. Morally, of course, it's reprehensible. But according to the laws of the United States of America, there are no criminal penalties for doing abortions.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate your call. Let's go next to Julie. Go ahead, Julie. You're on the air.
Thank you. Did I hear you mention, Cheryl, that the doctor and Kathleen Sebelius are related in some way or have a special relationship?
Right. They're actually friends. They know each other. In Kansas, there was a really long and protracted effort to actually bring these abortionists to justice because we knew that they were violating the law. And Sebelius actually intervened in order to protect them from, suffering too many consequences of their actions. So she was a major problem in Kansas that actually kept the late-term abortions going longer than they should have been.
Well, in a normal court case, doesn't the like the jury, when they're selected, they can't know anything about the case or anything? I mean, do you think that she would be, if this went to, like, the Supreme Court or something, do you think it would be something that she would be allowed to speak on?
Well, I don't know. I think the kind of influence that she has is more behind the scenes. She's a very powerful lady, and even in Kansas when she was the governor, she wielded a lot of power. And so a little bit of public pressure, and, a lot of times this actually happened and was noted in the grand jury report in Philadelphia in the Kermit Gosnell case, that often states have these political climates where it's understood in every regulatory agency that you do not go after abortion clinics. You don't inspect them. You don't hold them accountable. You disregard the complaints that come in about them. And that was the kind of political climate that was here in Kansas. Now she has even more power, and Carhart is a friend of hers. So we're just hoping that she will not try to interfere in the investigations. We really have, and we don't believe that's irrational fear. We believe that that's based on past history.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for your call here. Our number 800-733-9829 to Port Charlotte, Florida. Robert, you're on the air.
Thank you very much. In our town here, we have an abortion clinic, and every Tuesday morning, local people from their church stand outside with signs, and what really upsets me is you're not allowed to talk to the person or give them any literature. All you can do is just stand there and hope they won't do it. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, I would consider that a violation of your First Amendment constitutional rights, and if I was you, I would seek legal assistance to challenge that. Exactly who's telling you can't talk?
I don't know. I was just told one day when I was staying there, you cannot talk to that person.
Yeah, that's this is America. We can talk if we want to. They may not like it, but we have the right to say things,
Robert,
in a public forum. So
where you're located, Robert, you're not too far from the offices of Liberty Counsel with Matt Staver, and certainly you could contact their offices to know what your rights are at 800-671-1776.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your call. Our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Just before we pick up our next call, I understand, Cheryl, that there's an attempt being made right there in Wichita to reopen George Tiller's abortion clinic. What's happening?
Well, it's not open yet. And there is an attempt being made. One of his former employees has raised some money. She's purchased his building, and she's attempting to reopen. Right now they have contractors down there remodeling the building. So it remains to be seen if they'll be able to open or not. And if they do open, we don't believe that they'll be able to stay in business very long because there just is not the demand for abortion in this community that there used to be,
This is Julie Burkhart?
Right, that's
okay.
Correct.
Now, there's a story from LifeSiteNews.com that quoted her as saying recently, quote, abortion is about motherhood. She said abortion care is about motherhood because, by and large, women coming in to have abortions are concerned about the kind of life and future for their children. What's your response to that?
Well, obviously it's not about motherhood. If it's about motherhood, they would assist the women through whatever issues there are in their life so that they could give birth to their babies. And that is not what Julie Burkhart's going to be about. That's not what that abortion clinic's going to be about if it's ever allowed to open. It's going to be about making money from killing babies. And we actually have a little project in the works. We're working actually behind the scenes. That's about all I can say about that to prevent that clinic from opening.
Let's go to our next caller, also from Florida. Sandy, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, when she was talking about how late they can have abortions, I could not believe that because the baby is totally normal. And it's like, I want to make sure that I have it right because I don't think a lot of people are aware of this. I mean, when I'm thinking about abortion, I think it's like in the first couple of months. Not that that's right, but it's like, it's already a baby. It's a child.
Cheryl?
Yeah, about 12% of all abortions done in America are done after the first trimester. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but when you're talking about 1.2 million abortions, it's really quite a few. And as far as the third trimester abortions, there are 4 abortion clinics in the United States that openly do these third trimester abortions, and they're located in states that don't have restrictions. On that kind of thing.
And when you think about the horrendousness of what was going on, I mean, the allegations for one abortionist actually snipping the spinal cords of the babies.
Oh my gosh!
This is reality, and that's what it goes under the guise of the so-called woman's right to choose.
Thank you.
We know that there are a lot of abortions like Kermit Gosnell, maybe not snipping spinal cords, but doing the late-term abortions under the radar. They don't want to take the heat for doing those kinds of abortions, so they do them quietly.
Yeah, and I mean, when we looked at the procedures that were done with the what was called the partial birth abortion, where they deliver all of the baby except for a portion of the head, and then actually put a scissors into the skull to open it up and suck out the brains so that the skull can collapse. I mean, it's barbarism.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that is still the late-term abortion method of choice, with the exception that they inject the baby with a drug that kills the baby in the uterus before they start the labor process, so that the babies are born through that same process, but they're actually dead when they're delivered.
Let's go.
And that's the only difference between what's going on now and the partial birth abortion thing.
Let's go to Lake Delton, Wisconsin. Carl, you're on the air.
The scriptural context for this whole thing is the Bible says, God says, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. So God is saying that this is a child.
Yeah.
And any woman that takes takes her child and puts it to death is accountable to God.
Yeah.
However, there is forgiveness for those women out there that have had abortions listening to this program, that God can forgive you. My first marriage, I had an abortion before I was a Christian. Since then, I've had 3 children. And with all 3 of my children, I led them to the Lord. Who invite Christ into their heart. When I get to heaven, my son is going to introduce me to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for that moment.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate your call here today. You know, our terminology is so interesting, Cheryl. You know, when the royal couple when the world found out they're having a baby, I mean, everybody called it a baby. They didn't call it this royal blob of tissue or a royal fetus. I mean, they're looking for the next heir to Britain's throne and refer to it as a baby, just exactly what it is.
Yeah, it seems like that right now in the world, really, the baby in the womb only has value if the mother wants it to. Otherwise, it's not. He's not considered human. He can be destroyed. He can be killed. He can be in the most brutal ways. He can be killed because, but in reality, the mother's attitude towards her baby does not affect the humanity of that baby. That baby is a human being and is deserving of protections.
Our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Our next caller is Diane from Milwaukee. You're on the air.
Yes, I'm quite familiar with all the abortion. I have a medical background. Here's my question. If, in fact, there were 650,000 people that marched on Washington against, or I should say for life, what and who and legal, all of those words are proper, can we call and demand a response to this murder? What legal, maybe Liberty Counsel, maybe ACLJ, I don't know. But our representatives, yes, if those 650,000 would call every number that is necessary, I'm asking if you know, as involved in this, or if it can be posted on BCY. We are at the point where we want to do something. We know the gruesomeness of all this. Mm-hmm. We've seen it. I've seen it. I want to do something, but we need the numbers to counteract the power of this lady. I forgot her name, the one that's in Washington. 650,000 has to be more powerful than her. We need to start responding.
Cheryl?
Well, that's really an excellent suggestion. In fact, it's always good to call your representatives in Washington, D.C., but the reality of that is that in D.C. they've had very little impact on abortion on a legislative level. The greatest impact that we've had as a pro-life movement has been at the state level. So I would encourage people, sure, call your congressman in Washington. They always need to hear about it. But also find out what's going on in your state. Is there any pro-life legislation that is being considered right now? And contact your state legislature and encourage them to support pro-life legislation. They really need the encouragement on the state level, and that's where we're making the most impact.
We've got to take a quick break here, and we'll be back with more of your phone calls. You're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America.
For the Worldview Week in Minute, I'm Brennan House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. Recently, the Washington Times reported that leading evangelicals, like the president of the National Association of Evangelicals and some folks with the Southern Baptist Convention and others, including Jim Wallace's organization, Sojourners, are working together to bring about citizenship for millions of illegal aliens. Well, regardless of what you think about this, and I'm not for it, because there are many social issues that have been brought on by illegal immigration, including the lack of jobs for current American citizens. But regardless of how you feel about it, this group was reported in the Washington Times as saying that now there needs to be a campaign on this issue, and the church needs to get right on this issue by reading Matthew 25, the exhortation to clothe and feed the stranger. My friends, if we read that in context, Jesus refers to those people as brethren, Christians, fellow disciples. Let's not take Scripture out of context to push a public policy agenda.
Cheryl Sullenger is our guest here today on Crosstalk. Yes, a tragic death that occurred just last week. And ladies and gentlemen, it is very tragic. They're working through the system right now, waiting for an autopsy. And Cheryl, as this last caller said, we're ready to act. We need to do something on this. This is totally wrong what has taken place. We want to be involved. And you are waiting right now for official autopsy results to come about as a result of this. What can people do, though?
Well, people can go to our website at operationrescue.org, and at the very top of our website, there's a big white box where you can put your email address and click the sign up button, and you'll get automatic email updates from us on this. Another thing is, if you are in the Maryland area, Washington, D.C. area, there's going to be a candlelight vigil at the hospital, Shady Grove Hospital, where Jennifer died from her injuries, and that will be coming up, I believe on the 17th.
Can people contact the Shady Grove Hospital to pursue something there?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, honestly. We could, if people wanted to contact the Shady Grove Hospital and ask them to make sure and file a complaint with the medical board, that would be a good thing as well.
And folks, I don't have the, that's in Rockville, Maryland?
That's correct. It's in Rockville.
Okay. I don't, let's see. I know that, folks, you can do a quick search on that on the Internet, the Shady Grove Hospital in Rockville, Maryland. To obtain that information there. Let's go back to the lines here. We have Rick, who's been holding from Traverse City, Michigan. Rick, you're on the air.
Yes, I really enjoy your program. I've been listening to it for quite a few years now, and this abortion thing is just getting too out of hand. I just can't believe this partial birth abortion. That's so horrific. I don't think even the Nazis would have thought that it was horrific. And, they've had abortion now for 40 years, and I think Father God eventually is going to avenge the loss of those 55 million babies, and sometime in the near future, I believe that 55 million Americans could perish because of all this that's going on.
Rick, thank you so much for your comment. Appreciate your call here today. Cheryl, we've just located the number here for Shady Grove Hospital. I'll give that number in a moment, but what is it you suggest that people call the hospital and ask or say?
We would encourage them to call the hospital and encourage them to make sure that a complaint is filed with the medical board asking for an investigation into the death of Jennifer Morbelli.
And folks, the number to Shady Grove Hospital is area code 240-826-6000, 240-826-6000. And you can ask that they file a complaint, you said, with the State Medical Examining Board?
Yeah, with the State Medical Board.
The State Medical Board, regarding the death of Jennifer Morbelli. That's Morbelli. Let's go to Washington State, and Barbara, you're on the air.
Okay. I know two women who were pregnant in their first child in their late 30s, and both of them, their obstetrician diagnosed those babies as having Down syndrome. So they said, well, you want to get an abortion or whatever, and both of them chose to have their babies. Neither one of those babies has Downs. So this is something that I think that, like this Jennifer Morbelli, I think these ladies need to get a second opinion. They need to wait and see, because how many times is the obstetrician wrong?
Yeah, false diagnoses. Is that something you've observed as well, Cheryl?
Yeah, it's very, very frequent. It's very frequent that would happen, and so we agree. We believe women need to seek a second opinion. They need to slow down. We know that it's disappointing and it's distressing to be told that your baby has medical issues, but taking the life of that baby isn't the answer, and so often the tests are wrong.
Thank you for your call. Let's go to Karen in Milwaukee. You're on the air, Karen.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make the comment that Obama is so concerned about gun control, and here we have these little babies dying every day since 1973, and nobody, including him, has even done anything about it. And he didn't mention that in his State of the Union speech. And all of us concerned people, and like 650,000 that march, plus all the rest of us that don't, I just think that our president has to take a stand for our country as a Christian country.
Well, on the contrary, Karen, he has been the most pro-abortion president this nation has ever seen.
You think so?
Absolutely. I know so. And even as I mentioned yesterday in the Crosstalk program, states that have sought to pull funding from Planned Parenthood, but instead contract with other services that minister to the health needs of women, when states have cut Planned Parenthood because of Planned Parenthood's specialties into abortion, the Obama administration instead has contracted directly with Planned Parenthood in order for monies to continue to go into their coffers, the nation's largest abortion provider. This is the most pro-abortion president we have ever seen in the history of this country. And, folks, we've got to really wake up to that idea. Cleveland, Ohio, go ahead, Don, you're on the air.
Yes. First of all, let me say that my heart breaks for women who have believed the lies that tell them that they have to have an abortion, especially poor women, that this is the only way that they have a chance of becoming more prosperous. Limit your family size, and then you can become more affluent. And I see a correlation between this and Molochism in the Old Testament, where people sacrificed their children to the false god Moloch. And again, it was to ensure future prosperity. And there's a similarity there that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, thank you, Don, for sharing that. We're out of time here on the program today. Cheryl Sullenger is our guest. By the way, folks, Shady Grove Hospital, you can contact them and ask that they file a complaint with the State Medical Board regarding the death of Jennifer Morbelli. Their number 240-826-6000. Stay plugged into Operation Rescue through their releases. Sign up for their news releases at operationrescue.org. Cheryl, thanks for being with us and making this story known to people all across this nation.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you getting the word out.
And folks, thanks for joining us here on Crosstalk. Again, take action and get signed up for those releases. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.